Hello and welcome to our presentation today, Designing Digital Ecosystems and Platforms. Especially we want to introduce our tangible ecosystem design method. So who attended our talk yesterday? That's good, because we will, I'm sorry for you, because we will use the same introduction as yesterday, so it's a little bit of repetition for you. Yeah? So, because when we want to talk about digital ecosystems, we first need to clarify some terms. So you attend this conference maybe now for the whole 2 days, and I'm pretty sure you have heard the term digital transformation a lot during this, but the people also talk about digitization and digitalization and all these different terms, yeah? And everybody uses these terms similarly, and this is completely strange and confusing and wrong, and that's why I want to clarify this a bit. So let's have a look, for example, at the music industry. We want to talk about 3 different steps of digital change. The first one, when we look at the music, in the beginning of the music industry, the product itself is, of course, the music. It was an analog product that was stored on a physical medium, the vinyl record. So who bought vinyl records back in the day? Who is still buying them as hipster? Me only. Okay, that's okay. Yeah. So, but the first thing they changed in the first digital change is the so-called digitization. There is no German word for that. And here the technology changed the product itself and made it into a digital product. So the first thing that happened in the 1980s was that the music, the product itself, now becomes digital. It's still stored at a physical medium, the CD, but the product itself, the music, is now digital. And this is the thing that's okay, this change, because nothing changes. The product itself changes, but nothing else changes. We buy the music the same way from our home. We go back into a store in our city. We buy the music. We listen to it. We buy it. We take it home. We listen to it on our vinyl record or on our CD player. Everything itself is the same. The other things change. When we talk about digitalization, now the technology changes markets and industries. And now we have digital processes. So now the digital product, the music itself, is not bound any longer onto the physical medium, the CD. It's just the digital file. And you don't have to go there to buy the music in the physical store. You can stay at home, you buy it in an online store. And why is this a problem? Why does this digital process change markets and industries? The problem is, there are not nearly as many digital stores as there were analog stores before. So the whole industry changes. There are only a few big, especially in the beginning, the digital store from Apple, the iTunes store. There was a big stores of them, and all the small stores in town, they went out of business. But this is also not very interesting, even so that this step is not so welcome by the industry because it changes so much. The next step, this is the interesting step now, the digital transformation phase. And here the music changes, the technology changes economy and maybe even the whole society by introducing digital business models. If you look at Spotify, but you can also look at Deezer, Apple Music, whatever you want. You don't buy the music anymore. Neither in a local store on vinyl, neither in a local store on a CD, neither in an online store. You don't buy it at all. You just pay your monthly fee and have access not only to the music that you were listening before to, but to the whole catalog of this provider. So this is the first big advantage that you have when you use these models. But all these digital ecosystem models that we have on the right side here, they offer additional, usually data-based advantages for their customers. In the music industry, if you allow, Spotify analyzes your listening behavior. It compares your listening behavior to all their other customers' listening behavior, and they can recommend music to you based on your listening behavior by recommend music from people that have a similar taste in music than you, and that's why these recommendations are so good. And why is this such a good example to explain this? Because the recommendation that the system gives on this databases, it was impossible in the analog world. Even if you would have had the best clerk in the record store or in the CD store in the world, and even if this person knows you very well, He would never ever have such a database by knowing so many other people that have a similar taste in music to give you a recommendation in such a quality that these companies can do on a database. And that's why it's so important, providing new additional value for your customers. And that's why I think we should talk about digital disruption and not just about digital transformation. And we want to change, not an epsilon step, not a delta step, but a real change. Yesterday I talked, why is this a good image for a real change? What PC do we see here, or what computer do we see here? It's the computer of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, where he invented the World Wide Web on CERN. So this is definitely a big change. So, but if we look at all these three different stages of digital transformation, of digital change, we can look at least in 2 dimensions on them. The first one, the bottom line, the x-axis here, is efficiency optimization and cost reduction. Nobody in the world can this better than the Germans. Making it a bit faster, making it a bit more accurate, yeah? Improve the Spaltmaß, as I told yesterday, yeah? These are the things. Nobody can do this as good as we can. But the thing is, we also need to go in the y-axis direction. We need to create new values. And we need to create new values not for our companies, but for our customers. Unfortunately, this is still new for many companies in Germany to think in that direction. We need to create new values for our customers. And I could talk about all these different things here, but I want to talk about digital ecosystems, and they are in the sweet spot. If you want to establish a digital ecosystem, you need to be cost efficient and you have your costs down. But you need to create also a lot of value for your customers. What are these digital ecosystems? All the companies that you know, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Tinders, Amazon Marketplace, all these that you know. What do they all have in common? They are not from Europe or from Germany, most of them. But we have a lot of them here. Mostly, they are not that successful. Some of them are in the B2B market, not in the B2C market. And also, they are usually not big names, but most of them, big names are behind them, but you don't see it. What is a digital ecosystem? This is the official definition. We don't want to talk about it, but if you want to have the slides in the end, you can look at them. What is a digital ecosystem? First of all, the most important thing, a digital ecosystem is a socio-economical system. This means it's not just technology. Companies and humans are part of the digital ecosystem. Very important thing. All the participants are in there voluntarily. You can't force them to participate in your digital ecosystem. That's why you need to create benefits that are mutual. Everybody who is participating in such an ecosystem needs to have a benefit in participating in there. In the core, there's something that we call a digital ecosystem service. And this digital ecosystem service provides the core advantage, the core thing that this ecosystem stands for. I will talk about this later on. And the most important thing on this slide is this digital ecosystem service is provided purely digital. Purely digital. But let's look at some examples. Airbnb. The company Airbnb offers a digital ecosystem service, Airbnb Lodging. There are other services from Airbnb, like Airbnb Experience, but let's talk about a classical service, Airbnb Lodging. It offers brokering of private accommodations provided by private hosts for travelers. But I just said this service needs to be purely digital, right? But I can't sleep anywhere completely digital, right? But that's not what's stated here. Airbnb just offers the brokering of these private accommodations. That's why they can scale so well. Their service is purely digital. They are the biggest provider of accommodations worldwide without owning any of them. The same with Uber. More classic and a long time around, eBay offers brokering of any kinds of goods provided by sellers for buyers. Same thing. Uber, the same thing. Uber Ride, there's also Uber Eats and other services, but usually these ecosystems were built in the beginning with one service. Uber Ride offers brokering of transportation provided by private drivers for passengers. And as you see, there's a pattern here. Yeah? We have a German company here, Caruso Database. It's in the B2B market. Caruso Database offers brokering of vehicle telematics data provided by OEMs for automotive for the automotive aftermarket. And it's the same thing. If you can't press your idea for a digital ecosystem service into the sentence template, you have a problem. We looked at hundreds of them, and we can press all of them in that sentence. If you can't do this, you definitely have a problem. If you do have too many ands and ors in your sentence, you have a problem. There are some very rare exceptions, but usually if you can press it in that thing, you have a problem. The other thing that you need to understand when talking about digital ecosystems is that it's not the same situation as in the old economy. You are not one company that produces a good or a product, or you provide a service that your customers will consume. You are now in a multi-sided market. Usually you are in the middle. There are people in yellow that provide things, like in Airbnb, the persons that provide these private accommodations, and on the other side, the travelers that want to consume it. There are some special cases, like Tinder, WhatsApp, where it's only an academic distinction between provider and consumer, so they are the same. But what we see more and more is the third part on the right here. It's still rare, but it's increasing, where we have more participants than two. So, for example, with Foodora, you have the restaurants that provide the food, you have the people who want to order it, and you have the riders that have to bring the food from the restaurant to the people. And the same with Schüttflix. We are pretty big fans of Schüttflix. If you look at their website, they really have a good explanation how they target their different customer groups. Because all these different groups that we see here, all the dotted lines are all your customers now. That's not anymore the customer. So Schüttflix offers brokering of bulk material provided by construction material suppliers for construction companies. But they also broker this bulk material transports of the bulk material provided by truckage companies for construction companies. So they have two different assets that they are brokering.
Yeah, so from all these examples that we have seen, we already recognize that there are many domains in which these digital ecosystems are created. And actually, you see some of them called here, in such a domain in which we find a digital ecosystem, or maybe even multiple digital ecosystems, like in the mobility domain, we call a smart ecosystem. And as we saw, they are from the energy domain, from the mobility domain. The last example, construction domain, where Schüttflix is not even there on the list. So you see basically everywhere. And that is in fact true. We say that everyone has the chance to make a change. Everyone has the chance to find a new business, to find a gap, and to fill that with a digital ecosystem. And that is attractive for many reasons. There are many opportunities on the left side. The orange ones are for the initiator of a digital ecosystem. There's a huge space to design something completely new that has not been there before. And there's the possibility to grow, to make use of network effects, and of course in the end, to scale well, to earn a lot of money, which is mainly what it is about. And on the right side, the red circles, these are some good reasons for participants to join a digital ecosystem. So there's access to many consumers or providers, so a lot of new potential customers, and business contacts, and then of course to establish completely new business models. Well, and we talk to many customers who are interested in joining digital ecosystems or even creating a new one. And especially, well, they think it can't be that difficult. We have already a platform, or we just have a CDO who does some digital things. We will think about the business model anytime because we think we are so important, anyone will join us anyway. So not a big deal. Well, in fact, of course, as you can already guess, and that's why we are presenting here today, it isn't that easy. It is difficult, and creating a digital ecosystem probably means leaving the comfort zone, doing something differently, designing it from end to end, looking from the very left, the consumers, to the very right, all the providers that we need, and balancing their interests, dealing with a lot of uncertainty, and of course not being able to force them to participate. To help a little bit, and that's of course another reason why we are here, we thought about aspects that are relevant for designing a digital ecosystems. And now multiple dimensions will come, and we consider them from three perspectives: the business perspective, the technological perspective, and the legal perspective. Well, I'm a software engineer, so it might be very tempting for me to just look at the technological perspective. And that's what we encounter many times, that it's the technological aspects that people think about first and only for a long time. But we need to consider business from early on. We need to use our legal advice to make sure everything goes well. And we need to look at, in these dimensions, at our own organization. Does it fit to the strategy that we have? Does it fit to the vision that we want to follow? How does this work so for us, and how does it work for the partners, since we can't do a digital ecosystem on our own? What does it mean for our partners? How do we find them? We explicitly wrote there scouting, because we need to really identify who is a potential candidate and how to integrate them from a business, from a technological, and from a legal perspective. And this carries on with the community, so the providers, consumers, and their potential customers as well. We need to find them, first of all, and we need to make sure that they stay with us for a long time, because, as we said before, they are independent organizations. We might not be able to force them to join with us, so we have to give them something such that they stay. And of course, we need to look at our competitors, look what they are doing, and some other players that we might forget easily, but since we talk about a mainly digital business, they are the well-known internet giants that could take over a certain business, especially since it's purely digital, if they're interested in that domain. So it's kind of important to look at what they are doing. So we have some guidance, and nevertheless, it is difficult. So that's a quote that someone wrote when we did a workshop, and after some time still, figured out it actually is difficult. It will remain difficult, but we want to help, to make it a little bit easier. And when we start, the first challenge is actually to figure out where we want to go to. Maybe there is some initial idea. What could be the outcome? Well, there's a duck here, but of course we have something before that. That is the egg. And when we just look at the egg, maybe we are not yet, cannot be completely sure what will be the result of it. It could be this, cute duck. Sometimes it's jumping. It could also be, a chicken. You already saw it. Could be a chicken, could be something more exotic, a snow owl, could be something completely different, a turtle. Well, maybe the outcome could already be something dangerous. Who knows? And to figure out what it is, the outcome of finding a digital ecosystem, we have a method. And Markus mentioned already in the beginning, we call it tangible ecosystem design. Tangible in German means greifbar, and I guess from looking at some of the pictures, you can already recognize why we call it tangible ecosystem design. We will go through that and explain you how it works and what it is good for. And we just show an excerpt now because we have limited time. So the 3 main steps of this method we will show to you. And there are some more additions to that. So we start with a service blueprint. What is that about? The idea is to get an overview of what's going on in the digital ecosystems to model the flow of actions. And we do that on multiple layers. The first one, and we will see an example right after that. The first one are user actions. So they describe the context in which something is happening. So what are people doing in the real world, in the actual world? And then they are using some tools, apps, websites on their computers, on their mobile phones. So we're interested in the tools and then in the interactions here on the second level, the blue one. What is then happening in the interaction between human and a tool? And then something else is happening in the background. Markus mentioned already the digital platform, so many things probably happen in the background that we are interested in. The user might not see it, but we, when we model a digital ecosystem, need to think about them. And in addition, there are some mostly non-IT preconditions, for example, some contracts that need to be there before something can happen. Okay, so typically we apply tangible ecosystem design in a workshop format. This means we bring together people that can have some experience in the domain, that's the main important thing, and that we bring together on a table, as you see here, really on a physical table, to work on the digital ecosystem together. And as I already said, we make it tangible by using Playmobil toys in this case, to make it really more understandable, to make it visual, what is actually happening in the digital ecosystem. So we provide the people with a lot of material, different cars to play with, just stuff to play with, to illustrate a digital ecosystem, or first of all, the service blueprint. And you see how it looks like once it's already quite finished. And we also tried how it would look like without these toys. it would look like that. And actually, we think this looks a lot nicer, also to not only from a visual perspective, but also to imagine what's going on and later on to explain what's going on. And to explain what's going on in a little bit more detail, we take the example of a video streaming service. Let's imagine we want to have a completely new video streaming service. And we now go through the first lane, the user actions, in which we describe the context of what's going on in the digital ecosystem. So what we have here is our family that's sitting at home at the couch and, well, decides to watch something via video stream. So one setting in which we have to do something, we have this context already. We have another context in which the dad needs to go on a business trip once more. So we have a mobile scenario where he is not at home, but still he wants to watch a movie or a series while he is on his way. And let's continue that. He is on his way. He's at the bus stop or at the train stop because, this very rare occasion that a train is late. So while he is sitting somewhere in the middle of nowhere, he still wants to watch his video. Once he will reach his hotel room, so again a context switch in which he is then in the hotel room and still wants to carry on watching his movie, maybe even get some additional context about the movie. And in the end, if he liked it, or maybe even especially if he didn't like it, he wants to give a recommendation or rating of this movie. So that's now one way of going through the service blueprint. I just basically read it from left to right, staying in the first lane, to understand what is generally going on when is such a video streaming service used. We also can go through this service blueprint vertically. And we will do that right now, starting again with the same situation. We have our family that's sitting at home wanting to watch a movie. And first of all, they need to figure out what they actually want to watch. And so they turn on their TV and they see some recommendations and scroll through recommendations to figure out what is actually the movie that the family maybe wants to watch. And to make this possible, a lot of things are happening in the background. There are algorithms that take the input of the family. The algorithm maybe knows already what the family has watched previously, what it has liked previously. The algorithm might know what other families have liked and watched so far. So based on this happening in the background, the recommendation can be provided. And to make this possible, we go to the last lane, the preconditions that need to be there. For being able to provide recommendations, we as the provider of the service, of the video streaming service, we need to have contracts or legal agreements with all the film studios, movie studios that we want to be there, so that we can, include them in our recommendations. And this then as an overview as it could look like. For sure, it's not complete in terms of all the features and functionalities that need to be there for having a video stream service, but there are some pointers to the things that are really important from a digital ecosystem perspective.
Yeah, as Matthias told, it's not complete, but the most important features are included here. We need to be able to watch on the TV, we need to be able to download these things, we need to be able to stop and resume at any time, and we need to give recommendations. It's a completely coherent story, including the most important features. But also, all the important players are also included here, and you can see them because you can touch them, they are actually standing there. And this is important for our next step, the so-called service matrix, where now the Playmobil is not just toys, but now the Playmobil gets semantics. So we use companies, are represented by cars. Don't ask why, it would be a long story. Yeah. And all the humans are still figures there. So we have the one that is brokering the assets, so the main player. Then we have of course maybe human consumers, or we have other companies that consume these services. We need people that provide the assets, in our case the movie studios that provide them, but also the recommendations could be assets, and we have support providers like payment providers or other people. It could also be interesting, especially if you're in the B2B business, to know what are the customers of your customers, because maybe you want to provide a pricing that is based on the business that they are doing with that. So you need to understand the business of your customers also, and maybe even one direction more. Of course, you need somebody who operates this, and there are also the competitors down there. So now the Playmobil is not just toys, now the Playmobil becomes semantics. And the first step that our customers that are playing through the digital ecosystem design method now have to do is place all the players that are represented by Playmobil on the blueprint now in the correct role on a piece of paper down there. This usually takes up to 3 hours to actually identify which company is playing which role in there. And then we want to model 4 different flows between them. The first one is the core asset flow. Our core asset are movies and TV series. This is really easy. They are coming from the movie studios to us, and we stream them to our customers. Usually your core asset flow should be really, really simple. If it's complicated, you have a problem. The next one is the data flow. Of course, this is not a substitute for a correct computer science data flow modeling, yeah? But you need to name here, we make our users name here all the important data that they need. And for example, if you want to have a recommendation for child-friendly TV series or child-friendly movies, we need to have this data. And maybe the movie studios have them, and that's the case in the real world. We get it from them. If we wouldn't get this data from them, but we still would need it for our business model, we would have to come up with it on our own. So name all the most important data already here. And then the next one, and this is usually for our customers the most important one, what's the money flow? And again, we don't need just there is money flowing. We make them actually name the amounts or the percentages that they are going to expect in this area. And let's assume we can decide for our streaming service, is it a flat rate model or is it a pay-per-view model? For the sake of our discussion here, let's assume it's a pay-per-view model. And each and every movie costs 99 cents. If you have a payment provider that takes a consistent rate of 80 cents, no matter how large the amount of money he transferred is, you have a problem. Because you get 99 cents for the movie, you have to give 80 cents to your payment provider, and you only have 19 cents left to pay for the movie and to live from that. And you're all sitting here and said, nobody would ever come up with such a model. But unfortunately, I would have to tell you they do. Companies make big mistakes on such a model that you can find out with such simple things. If you really put it on paper, they make these mistakes. And the same thing is the legal perspective. This is the last one in red. Again, I don't care that there is any kind of legal perspective, legal contract between them. But is there an important legal contract? Like, do I have exclusivity? Is there one movie studio that gives only me the movies? Or do I have like a 5-year contract guarantee that I get the movies or something? These are the things that are interesting here. And that's why we built this service map here.
Okay. And the last tool that we look at in the tangible ecosystem design approach is the motivation matrix. As I said before, it's very important to balance the interest of all the different parties, all the different involved organizations. And so what we create is, as the name already says, is a matrix. Through Marco's service, what he introduced, the service map, is that where we have already identified the important players. And we now choose the most important ones, to keep it a little bit more simple for now, in this case 6, where we place these cars that we previously had, or first of all in the column, and then also in the top row, the exact same cars in the same order, the same organizations, players in the same order, to create a matrix in which we have the same pair basically always then in the diagonal, where we have these blue cards. So what do we fill in these blue cards? What we fill there are the expectations or the wishes that these organizations have. What do they want from their participation in the digital ecosystem? And then, of course, there's still a lot of space left. Namely, then we describe what each player here on the left gets from all other players that are then placed in the top row. So we figure out on each card, on each individual card, what is the benefit that they gain from the participation of the other players. And of course, we want to be creative there. We want to have as many benefits for everyone as possible. And nevertheless, there might be some blank cells. And we mark them very well visible with these red post-its. And as I said, we want to balance interests, and we want to make sure that everyone has something, gains something from the digital ecosystems, so he stays with us. So if we have a row that there are some red cards, that's not a problem, because not every player has a relation to every other player. That's fine. But as soon as we notice that there is one player who basically has no benefits, so only red cards, probably that's a hint that there is something wrong. So it's a player that is needed for the digital ecosystem, but it doesn't get any benefits from that. Probably that means there's a flaw in the system as we designed it, and a hint to think about it once more. And to make it more visible, what the roles are that each and everyone takes. We have some stereotypes that we introduced to mark these players that we have placed there on the motivation matrix before. And we have chosen some animals. You can see them already here on these green shapes. And these animals, these have some kind of meaning. It's rather, well, informal, but it should indicate a little bit more what are these players, what is the main role, stereotype that they have in a digital ecosystem. And we have them here, and we also have English titles for them. So I can't go through all of them, but for example, there's the big fish, the most important one. Without this organization, without this company, nothing is going to work. So important to mark the big fish. Or the poor dog, the guy who, well, needs to be there, maybe doesn't gain that much, remains the poor dog. Or the jack of all trades, well, an organization that could be placed everywhere, has its hands everywhere, is important everywhere. And we can place them, as it's done here, in these blue cells, assign basically each organization such a role, or maybe even multiple roles. If there are multiple roles, it maybe is even easier to place them on top, as you see here. Makes it easy to recognize who is actually who. And with that, we have reached the end of a, well, shorter version of the tangible ecosystem design. As I said before, there are more steps in this, but these are the most important ones. And I want to end this presentation with a call to action. Taking part is a nice thing for Olympic Games. Many are happy if they take part. But if we only take part, that's not going to work from the economic perspective that we look at right now. We need to have people and organizations who are willing to take the risk, take the steps to design their digital ecosystem, to try out something new. And with that, we want to end. Unfortunately, we can't be there for very much longer time because we need to catch a train. But you will find us on LinkedIn, you will find our webpage, and just a few hints what you will find there. We have recently written and published a study in which we show the digital ecosystem landscape in Germany. We looked at around 40 digital ecosystems that are mainly from Germany, at least definitely they are active in Germany, and we explained some special things about them, something that we can learn from them. And we have even some more text that you find online where we define digital ecosystems, show what we understand by digital ecosystems, why they are challenging, but also why they are very relevant and interesting to work on. You find us also on YouTube, where we have a talk about, well, again, defining and explaining digital ecosystems, and you have a longer version of a presentation where we describe the tangible ecosystem design in a little bit more, length than we could today.
And this presentation concludes the whole cube class here. So you are sitting on these nice cubes. So if you want to take one of these cubes with home, no problem. Yeah, you can also fold them so to make them flat. So if you want to take one of our cubes from the original cube class, feel free to do so. So thanks for your participation and have a nice conference.